Next, I'd like to introduce two women who are here from Oregon Department of Education, the Department of Assessment and Accountability. This is Holly Carter and Kathleen Vanderwall, and they will give us some updates on Smarter Balanced. Thank you.
And you have PowerPoints. Okay, so I'm here to. Do you have?
While we set up the PowerPoint, just wanted to introduce ourselves. This is Holly Carter, Policy Analyst in Assessment at the Oregon Department of Education in Salem, and I'm Kathleen Vanderwall, Manager of Test Design and Operations in our Assessment Division. We are absolutely delighted to be here. We see some familiar faces that we have worked with for many, many years. Unfortunately, Jim Lai, who was our mathematics assessment specialist, couldn't be with you. He chose to move back to Spokane, where he is from, and to be closer to family, and he's working at the university there. Holly and I, neither of us are math educators. However, we were very strong math students and love mathematics and love everything that math education stands for, because we believe that it is the role of higher education and K-12 teachers to be strong in mathematics so that students can learn to love math and all that it stands for and the wonderful things we can do with it. And as we get these slides going, it was my distinct honor as a young geologist 40 years ago or something to be on the U.S. National Committee to the International Association for Mathematical Geologists, and our focus was indeed to increase the mathematical requirements that universities would require of geology students in the country. And so we're definitely with you, but bear with us. We'll be talking more about policy than other things. I'm a member of the Smarter Balanced Item Development Work Group, and Holly is a member of the Accommodations and Accessibility Work Group, which means that if we don't have state work to do in a week, there's probably 10 hours of Smarter Balanced type of work we do, but those times are rare, because we usually have state work to do, but we do try to stay up on things. So Holly.
So, there we go. I'm too short. There we go. So Kathleen introduced us in what our roles are, both within the Department of Education and within the work going on to develop the Smarter Balanced assessments. The focus that we're going to have in our presentation with you today is to talk about the work that Smarter is doing to develop the mathematics assessment with the focus on performance tasks. Again, as Kathleen mentioned, since neither of us are math content experts, we'll be focusing more on policy and the process that Smarter Balanced is taking, as opposed to delving into the content that they'll be assessing. But there will be some of that as we go through the slides as well. So very quickly, we can ignore the first part, because we understand that you are all, oh, there we go. Okay, so overview of what we're going to be talking about today, as we mentioned, we'll be going over some high-level policy changes and looking at developments of Smarter Balance that have been coming out over the last months and weeks and even days. We'll be looking at the implementation timeline and focusing on the work that's currently going on and the exciting work that we have coming up ahead of us in the next couple of months. We'll be delving into the item development process and looking at the item types that will be supported for the math assessment. And then at the end, if time allows, we'll also just quickly take you through some sample performance tasks that Smarter Balanced has developed. You've got.
I just wanted to say, since performance tasks is at the end, and that's very dear to your hearts, because I think performance tasks are probably the level that community college and higher ed would expect of their students in terms of classroom assessments. Smarter Balance has really been struggling to develop performance tasks. In the beginning, they were more like 17-page instructional units, and we've gotten them down where it will just take maybe a few classroom periods, but they're really a work in progress, and we have a few that have been released, and I hope that in the future that in association with the work that Lisa is doing in Carter College and that we're doing in higher ed, that we can collaborate in designing some of these performance tasks. Right now, ODE has a small amount of money from Smarter to develop constructed response and selected response items, and Lisa and I have been working together to figure out how we can engage some of you in that development work. Looking back at policy at the national level, I'm sure most of you are familiar with the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, which is, I guess, an underpinning of the public school system K-12. And they offer maybe 12 to 17% of the funding for K-12 education. However, the regulations around the ESEA Act are such that they impact almost everything we do in education K-12 within the public schools. It started as the War on Poverty in the 60s, then in the 90s it was called Improving America's School Act, and there were funds available called Goals 2000, and then of course in the early 2000s it was No Child Left Behind, and we anticipate that it will be something else, called something else in the next few years, but currently there hasn't yet been a new authorization formalized of the Improving America's School Act, and most states have applied for. Oregon has been awarded a waiver so that we could be more self-directive in terms of the use of those IASA funds at this time. And another important evolution in national policy has been the Common Core state standards, and most states now have adopted them, and there are two reach to the top large assessment grants out there. PARC and Smarter Balanced. Oregon is part of the Smarter Balanced Consortium. In addition, there are two consortia serving the needs of students with the most significant cognitive disabilities, which are the Dynamic Learning Maps and the National NCSC. I don't remember exactly what that stands for. And in addition, there are two consortia for English language learners so that we can better assess the language demand of both the English language arts Common Core state standards and also the language demand in mathematics, which are a requirement. And one of those consortia is called ELPA 21, which was just funded, and Oregon is the lead state on that. Timeline, let's just point out, currently we are really focused on item writing and review. As most of you know, Smarter Balance just released its first set of items, which I have to say has been an interesting process with all of these states bickering back and forth. Is this good enough? Is this good enough? And no one's really satisfied, but at a certain point they're released. But it's a very exciting effort, and I hope you have the opportunity to look at these. There's a public comment period, and there's also a help desk available for those who are looking at these items for 1 month. So it would be best, if you have time to look at them, to do it within 1 month. So if you have issues like I might have, you can call them and get some help. We're looking forward to the pilot test later this winter or spring, and then to a field test that will be upcoming. And then the operational Smarter assessment, which will be the responsibility of the states, will begin in 2014-15, and that's the time at which Oregon's assessment in mathematics and English language arts will be based on the Common Core state standards.
So, switching back the focus to the state level, there have been some other policy changes that we are keeping in mind as we move forward with this common assessment that will be used for federal accountability as well. One of that is that we are going to be looking, as Kathleen mentioned, at field testing the Smarter assessment in 2013-14, getting ready for that transition from OAKS to Smarter Balanced. Part of the work that's going to coincide with that has to do with Oregon's graduation requirements, particularly looking at the essential skills graduation requirement. Currently, students graduating need to demonstrate proficiency in the essential skill of math problem solving, and they have multiple ways that they can demonstrate that proficiency. One is through the OAKS mathematics assessment. The other is through math work samples scored using the official state scoring guide. So as we move forward, we know that we're going to be transitioning from OAKS to Smarter for federal accountability of states and districts. We're also needing to look ahead at what that's going to look like for student accountability for that graduation requirement, and making sure that as we transition that we are giving students adequate notice by their 8th grade year if we're going to be increasing the rigor to which we're holding them accountable to graduate. So in the meantime, we will be, based on the Smarter Balanced assessment, that first iteration will be doing some correspondence studies to find out what performance on the Smarter Balance corresponds to the current achievement standard of meets for OAKS, so that during that interim process we can be holding students accountable to that level, regardless of what achievement level is considered meets for that district and school accountability. We're also going to be looking at aligning the scoring guides to make sure that the scoring guides are also aligned to the new Smarter standards. We've begun some professional development work that will continue to ramp up over the coming months and years to help districts look at their existing work sample prompts and look at what they can do to modify them to get them to that elevated rigor that might be required to align more to the Smarter performance tasks. So in addition to that, some other related policy questions that we're delving into, and as we get into them in more detail, we'll be able to engage more with the higher education community, looking at what evidence needs to be collected prior to that transition to make an informed decision, to both ensure that students have that adequate notice, that teachers have the notice to be able to reflect that in their instruction, and also to make sure that those students really are college and career ready. Looking again at work samples and other approved options to see what changes might need to be made to the required achievement standards to make sure that we have everything at an aligned level of rigor. And also identifying when we're going to transition over that achievement level for student accountability and when they would start using the Smarter assessment instead of OAKS as an option to demonstrate proficiency in the essential skills. So a reminder of where we are today. The 2012-13 school year We are going to continue assessing students for federal and state accountability using OAKS. We'll also do that during 2013-14, switching to Smarter operationally in 2014-15. In the meantime, while we will be using OAKS operationally for the next 2 years, as Kathleen referenced, we will be pilot testing Smarter this year, in addition to the operational OAKS assessments. And next year, we will be field testing items that will be included on the operational Smarter assessment. So that will all be going on in addition to the operational OAKS, which are going to be used for accountability. As Kathleen referenced, we also are beginning work on developing a new English language proficiency assessment called ELPA 21. That we anticipate will become operational starting in 2016-17. The exciting thing about that, as Kathleen alluded to, is that that assessment will be designed based on standards that will correspond to the common core state standards in both math and ELA. It will be a test of English language proficiency, but it will be more tied in with what a student's proficiency needs to be able to access content in their other classes. So it won't be a content-based assessment, it will be a proficiency assessment, but there will be that tie-in with the Common Core, which is a very exciting development.
Okay, just a little bit about item development. Evidence-based design is the contextual framework for the item development of Smarter Balanced. And it's kind of in a nutshell that Smarter Balanced requires its item developers, be those vendors or state who might manage some of the item development, and also states who utilize faculty and teachers to do that item development, that we start with claims about student learning, and then we build evidence that supports that item represents an accurate claim for that particular learning. The content specifications are at the domain level, and in mathematics there are 4 claims that comprise the Common Core state standards, and there's a slide articulating those in a few minutes. Then the test specifications is where we start getting into how many items for each of those claims, and the required distribution of depth of knowledge, whether these are require a greater or lesser depth of knowledge, and also other details, including the scoring rubrics, those in which that might be require human judgment versus machine scoring, things like that. Just a quick run through. We're developing selected response items. Of course, the huge advantage to selected response items is if they are valid items, then that's great, because they will be machine scored, and that's quicker, so we can get quicker results back to the educators. But in addition, there will be constructed response to the extent possible. We will have machine scored constructed response, and we do that through very precise computer-based rubrics that we define in association with writing the items. And also performance tasks. To a certain extent, the performance tasks, to the extent possible, will be comprised of selected response and constructed response. Others will have longer writing or manipulation types of things associated with them. These are the 4 mathematics claims, which I would certainly be embarrassed to say anything about those because I think you know much, much more about those than I do. So I'll just leave it up for a second. But these claims will be the domains from which the scores from Smarter Balanced are produced. Okay, now we have a few items, and this is where we will especially miss Jim, who is off teaching university in Spokane. Here, I just wanted to mention again the work that we'll be doing with Lisa Reynolds in the Core to College project to think of ways that we can engage faculty in the development and review of these items. We have a very small study that we've been funded by Smarter Balanced to do to engage K-12 teachers in this process, a few of whom are in the room. These I'm just going to leave up for a minute. And Jim was comparing these with smarter performance tasks when he was presenting this.
So just to clarify, the last 3 slides that we looked at were all parts of one performance task. So if you're familiar with our current math work samples, you might have noticed that the level of detail for this does go beyond what we currently are using. It's a multi-step process. It really, the focus is to engage students in that material. And here's just, this slide reflects back on the performance task prompt itself to show what the writers were hoping to get from students as part of that scoring. And here's just another sample item. This one is not quite as involved as the last example. And all of these are available with some limited notes in the electronic copy of the PowerPoint, which I believe you will have distributed to you, or can have distributed to you through the organizers. So if any of you are interested in looking at these in more detail, we will have them available. So at this stage, we just wanted to, after presenting to you what we have, open up for the rest of our time to see what questions you might have, and with that, we'll open it for questions.
Okay. Okay, the question is, how long will the Smarter assessment take in terms of class time, because there will be an online component as well as a performance task component. And frankly, I don't remember precisely how much it is. We've had some discussions at the chief school officer level, so that would be at the Rob Saxton, formerly Susan Castillo level, discussing whether there might be a shorter form for Smarter Balanced and a longer form, and currently there are some compromises that are in action because the push and pull, first, of course, the Common Core state standards are very important. It's absolutely crucial to the future of our nation to allow students to address this much more rigorous fundamentals in mathematics and English language arts, and we can't do that by going with business as usual like a 45 minutes Oaks assessment. However, on the other hand, what is reasonable in terms of the amount of time that we allow for the assessment during the school year. So I don't have a precise answer for you because there is not a precise answer for you. There are many estimates out there. You might hear some people say, days, or they might give it in number of hours, but I would really hope that we understand all of the policy discussions that are going on and not try to simplify to a kind of an answer like 6 hours or something like that.
And just to add to that, one underpinning that is going to be different about the Smarter Balanced Common Assessment compared with our current Oaks assessment is that Smarter is really anticipating that part of the total time that they are envisioning going into the final work product for some of these performance tasks will include more instructional based time that's kind of leading up to the actual assessment. So they've built that in, whereas our current assessment, it really is off to the side of the actual instruction that's going on. So some of it is sort of intermingled, which makes it, again, a little bit more difficult to say with any precision how much time will actually be spent taking the assessment as opposed to the broader leading up to and preparation.
Okay, the question is, will the Smarter Balanced Assessment be one time or multiple opportunities? We envision that it will be one time, except in very unusual cases where there's been an irregularity in the administration of the assessment or some other concern that would require a retake. Do I have that right? Oh, at the high school level? Good question, because we're always thinking third grade through high school for assessment, so forgive me. Yep, no. Okay, at the junior level. In high school, we believe it will be the junior level at 11th grade. And I'm stepping out on the limb here a little bit, but certainly with the high stakes use of potentially of the Smarter Balanced Assessment for the essential skills requirement that all students must meet for a high school diploma, we will be looking to see if in Oregon we could offer another opportunity for those students who hadn't yet met the achievement standard to retake, to demonstrate their mastery.
Do you still expect to see an alternative assessment format done at the district level for those students that do not achieve acceptable performance on the Smarter Balance?
I'm going to answer that briefly, and I can tell Holly is eager to add more because she works a lot with the essential skills policy. But yes, unless there is a change in law, we do envision that there will be multiple options for students to meet the essential skills
Yes, that is correct. So currently we support a a variety of assessment options, and we don't require that students first take OAKS and fail to meet the standard before using those other options. They're all seen as being at that equal level. While we haven't made any final policy decisions about what it will look like once we transition to Smarter, at this point we anticipate that that general model will continue to apply, that we might end up switching Smarter out for OAKS in terms of that assessment option, which for those students that meet, it will be very convenient because they're required to take it for their district's accountability purposes. So if they're able to meet on that model, it would preclude them from needing to go to the other avenues. But we do continue to strongly encourage districts to be administering work samples regardless. In addition to the graduation implications, that same administrative rule that created the essential skills requirement also created a local performance assessment requirement, which we call more casually the opportunity to learn. That applies at grades 3 through 8 and at least once in high school, where districts are required to administer a local performance assessment, which includes, as one example, a work sample scored using the official state scoring guide. And one of the required subjects that they must do that is math. So students should be continuing to do that regardless of the essential skills implications. If a student were not to meet on the Smarter assessment, they would continue to have those other options available to them. The other point, going back to your original question around the number of opportunities that would be available, as Kathy mentioned, we envision that there will primarily be just that single opportunity. Because really, as with our current system, the Smarter Balance Test will be a summative assessment that should be administered only after that student has received final instruction. In the meantime, Smarter is also envisioning making available interim and formative assessments that will provide teachers and students with feedback on their progress throughout the year so that they can use those to measure when a student has mastered the content and is ready to take that summative assessment. So that aspect that districts are currently using the multiple opportunities of OAKS to maybe get a litmus test earlier in the year of where a student stands will be more appropriately addressed through formative and interim assessments that were designed to provide that type of feedback.
I think that in Oregon's system, it was designed so that the local work samples would be part of our assessment system along with the summative assessment that the state provides through OAKS, for example. In more recent years, over the past, 3 or 4 years, we've had an essential skills requirement. And so at the high school level, we've become maybe more loose in the way we're talking, and we might say that for an individual student, they have multiple options for demonstrating mastery of, for example, math problem solving. So that could be OAKS or a work sample or certain score on SAT or ACT or any number of things.
No, to clarify from earlier in our presentation, the Smarter assessment will be comprised of these 3 item types. We will have selected response, constructed response, and performance tasks. The references we were making earlier in the presentation to work samples and using those to prepare students is that by using them throughout the year as a formative tool, you can help students to get ready so that by the time they take the Smarter summative assessment, which includes performance tasks, they'll be prepared for that general format and also hopefully the rigor that they'll see on that summative assessment. And again, as Kathy mentioned, apart from that, while we don't hold districts accountable in terms of they're not reporting scores to us, districts should be administering local performance assessments, which might include work samples scored using the state scoring guide. as part of that opportunity to learn, and also possibly as an essential skills graduation avenue.
Okay, I think it's time. Thank you very much for inviting us, and thanks for this opportunity to share. And I'll just flash it up here with our contact info if you want to follow up on anything. Thanks, Holly.
Thank you, Kathleen and Holly, coming from Salem to do this presentation for us. We will also make their PowerPoint available on our website afterwards so that you'll be able to look at it again if you want to.